Okay, so it is day 7. Again, it is Wednesday, April 2nd, and we are still technically in Unit 1. We just took our factoring quiz. So now we're going to take the next step in talking about quadratics. We've been looking at quadratic expressions, okay? That is no equal sign. There's not an equal sign. But now we're going to go one step further and talk about quadratic equations and how to solve them. Now on that quiz, the bonus questions showed some quadratic equations, so if you did the bonus and you got them right, you're a step ahead. That's what we're learning about today. So, quadratic equations, there are a few ways that we can solve them, but today we're going to start by just talking about why on earth we spent so long learning about factoring, because factoring is one of the first ways to solve quadratic equations. So, the first way to solve is solve by factoring The second way is to solve using a formula that we'll learn. So we'll solve by factoring or solve using the quadratic formula. This is a fun unit because I'm going to make you guys sing. You're like, what are you talking about? When we get to the formula, I'll tell you what I mean. Okay, so here's how we do this. First of all, we need to know the format of a quadratic equation. And in standard form, in the way that we normally see them, it is in that ax squared plus bx plus c, as we're used to. So I'll just write that up at the top here as a note. So ax squared plus bx plus c. We've seen this a million times. The only thing different is now we have that equal to 0. Yes, perfect. And our goal is always to make it equal to 0. So if it's not equal to 0, we'll talk about what we would do in those scenarios. So let's see. I'm going to pull out one of my old worksheets and use that to give you guys some problems here. Let's look first at an example. So, here are examples. Let's say we have a quadratic equation that is x squared plus 9x plus 20 equals 0. Now, something to note here is in the past, maybe back in Algebra 1 or even pre-algebra, when we solve an equation for a variable, we get one answer. Only one. There's never going to be more than one answer when you're solving for a single variable. But in a quadratic equation, we have x squared. There's a 2 here. Whatever your leading term is, leading term just being the first term in the equation, whatever the exponent number is, which in this case is 2, that's going to tell you how many answers we're actually going to get when we solve the equation. Now, I don't want to scare you too much. We're going to go up to 2, and that's probably as far as we'll go in this class, just because of time limits. If anyone is interested in seeing higher numbers, you can always come in on a Friday and we can do some math for fun. But that is up to you guys. I won't make you do it. So anyway, let's solve by factoring. So how do we factor a quadratic expression? We just did a quiz over it. What would I do here?
A, B, C.
A, B, and C. That's what we have. My A is here, my B is next, and my C is there. So, what is my value of A?
1.
It's 1. My B, it's 9. It's positive 9. And my C, 20. All positive numbers, which is nice. We don't have to think about our signs. So we have our A, B, and C identified. Now let me ask myself, did I start recording? Yes, I did. Just wanted to make sure. What do we do from here?
Oh, we see we'll go back to 20.
Yes, we want to find what numbers can we multiply together to make 20. We're going to list out the factors of 20. Just like we've been doing. So, let's think about it. What are some factors of 20? 1 and 20. 2 and 10. Good. 4 and 5. And if we wanted to, we could reverse those. 5 and 4, 10 and 2, 20 and 1. However, since we're only dealing with positive numbers here, and because our A is 1, we're not going to have to do any guessing and checking. So let's just list these 3. Okay, how do I know which pair of numbers I'm going to use? They need to add up to 9, my middle term. So 1 plus 20 is 21. Here, I'll write my B over to the side. Just remember, we're trying to see what 2 numbers multiply to C and add to B. So, yes, 4 plus 5 is 9. So, what do my factors look like? Yeah, x plus 4 times x plus 5. This is my factored form. Now, all we got to do is bring down our equals 0, because now we're looking at an equation. So, in order to find the 2 values of x that will make this quadratic equation true, what we need to do is take our factors now. So, solving by factoring, we just factor like normal, and then since both of these are equal to 0, we're going to solve 2 equations. We're going to pull our factors out and separate it. Now we have x plus 4, and we're going to set it equal to 0. And then we have x plus 5 equal to 0. Okay. Now, it may have been a little bit since we solved equations, but how do I solve these? Let's start with x plus 4. Good. We're going to subtract 4 on each side of the equal sign. And what happens to my 4's? They cancel out. And I bring down my x equals what? -4. So we just found one of our answers for x. That wasn't so bad. Now let's solve our next one. How do I do that? Yes, subtract 5 from both sides. 5's will cancel. And what will I get as my answer? -5. Good. And that's it. We solved it. Not so bad. Once we know how to factor, it gets a little easier because this should be reviewed. So let's try another one. Before we do though, do we have any questions about what just happened? Or does this make sense to you guys? Making sense? That's good. That is coming back. That's good. Okay, let's do another example. Number 2 here. Let me try one that's a little bit trickier. How about three x squared plus 11x plus 10 equals 0. So, here's a new quadratic equation. What should we be doing first? Yes, we always want to look at our A, B, and C first. So, I didn't leave myself a ton of room. I'm going to try to squeeze it up there. What's my value for A? 3. My B? 11. And my C? 10. Okay. So, anytime your A is not 1, alarm bells should be going off in your head. What should we do when A is not equal to 1? We need to include it. Now, we only include it if we can't get rid of it. So what are we checking for first? A greatest common factor. Is there a greatest common factor? There's not. There's not. So we do need to include it. So what is that going to make my factor pairs look like? What will my first term be in each parentheses?
3x.
Good. 3x. Plus or minus something. And x plus or minus something. Good. Okay, so I know what my pairs should look like. We'll just continue the same process above. Now that we have these, we're going to look at our factors of 10. So, factors of 10. 1 and 10. What else? 2 and 5. What else?
10 and 1.
Yep, 10 and 1. And then also 5 and 2. Now, can anybody tell me why did I not list the opposite, like reversed factors on this first problem, but I did on the second one? Does anybody know why? Cody?
That where the 3 or what the 3 is multiplying.
Yes. Yes. On this first problem, it didn't matter what order my numbers went in because it won't change how they multiply. If I were to do rainbow method here, I'd get the 4x and the 5x. If 5 and 4 were switched, I would still get 4x plus 5x. Nothing would change. But on this problem, my first term in each parenthesis is different. So if I do a 1 here and a 10 there, that will give me a different answer than putting 10 first and 1 second. So when we have different options in our parentheses, we do want to look at all the possibilities rather than just the first set there, just in case they don't work. So let's see, what do I need to do to figure out which pair is correct? We could use the rainbow method. Okay, what pair do we want to try?
5, 2.
5 and 2, let's do it. So plus 5 plus 2, and 5 times x is 5x. 3x times 2 is 6x. When I add them together, I get 11x. So, that's good. That's our middle term. We wanted it to be 11x, and we got it. So we have our factors, and that is all good and wonderful. But now, since I just showed you above, what is the next step I would take to now solving this equation?
3x plus 5 equals 0.
Yes, we're going to set them equal to 0. 3x plus 5 equals 0.
And then x plus 2.
Good. And then we'll also set x plus 2 equal to 0. So let's start with 3x plus 5 equals 0. Now we have a two-step equation, a little trickier than the ones above. When I have two different operations, I've got a multiplication, 3 times x, and I've got addition, plus 5. Which one do I get rid of first? The 5. Minus 5 on both sides. My 5's will cancel. I'll bring 3x down, and it's equal to negative 5. Good. Okay. So now I have 3x equals negative 5. I'll move that up because I know we're getting to the end of the page. What do I do from here?
Divide both by 3.
Good. Divide both sides by 3. And we will get x equals 0.6. Now, does it show on your calculator 0.666667?
Mine says 1.
1.6? Let me see. Let me get my calculator.
It is negative 5 thirds, so it's right answer.
Yes. So, thank you for asking that. If you don't want to deal with decimals,
You can just leave it at.
you can leave it as a fraction. You can say x equals negative 5 over 3. That is a valid answer, and I will take it. But if you like them, yes, okay, so that's what it is. When you do on your calculator negative 5 divided by 3, you will also get negative 1.66666, repeating forever 7. So what the calculator is doing there is it's rounding up the last decimal. Let me get my calculator. I don't know why I'm not looking for it harder. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to type that in. Oh. So negative 5 divided by 3, and we get this. So what's happening here is it's actually not this number of 6s and a 7 at the end. This is a repeating decimal, which means that 6 actually goes on for infinity, forever. It never ends. It just can't fit on the calculator forever, so we round up the last point. If you want to write that this is your answer, when you see a repeating number like this, you'll write it like 1.6 with a line over the top of it. This means negative 1.6 repeating. So the line over the top tells you that it is repeating. And that's how I would like for you to write it. 6 repeating. Or the negative 5 over 3. Both are correct. Yes?
Can we simplify the fraction? Or
Simplify the fraction. Can it be simplified? Or do you mean like write it as a mixed number?
mixed number?
A mixed number. Okay, so what would our mixed number be?
Negative 1 over 2/3?
Negative 1 over 1 and 2/3. That's another option. Yes, you can do it that way too.
Fine.
It's okay. That's okay. So you actually have 3 ways of writing this. I'm okay with any of them, okay? Because they're all the same number. It's all correct. Whichever way you like best is fine with me. Okay. So after all that, we're not done. We still got to solve the other factor. X plus 2 equals 0. And How do we do that?
Shut two from
Yeah, take away 2 on both sides, and you'll get x equals -2. So, there you go. We solved 2 quadratic equations. Is this hard?
Yes,
It's hard?
it's just a lot.
It is a lot. It's a lot of steps, I'll tell you that. It is a lot of steps. Factoring can be exhausting, okay? It has never been my favorite part of math, but if you are someone that doesn't like factoring, maybe you like formulas. I loved the quadratic formula, which we will learn about next. It just depends on how your brain works, so we'll see. Before we do move on to that, I would like to give you guys like 3 or 4 to do on your own. We'll go over them together. I want to make sure that you guys got it, that it's sticking, and then we'll talk about the quadratic formula. So, does anybody still need this, or can I tear it out? I'm going to move it unless someone says otherwise. And this is page 1. Okay, so I'm going to start a new page. And okay, so let's try a couple here. So try on your own. And here's the directions that you'll be given anytime you're asked to solve an equation that is quadratic. It'll say something like, solve each quadratic equation for all values of x. So, here's a few to try. X squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 0. 2 x squared plus 7x plus 12 equals 0. Two x squared plus 14x plus 20 equals 0. And one more. Now, if you don't finish all 4, that is okay. I'm just giving you 4. Just do as many as you can in the time I'm giving you. 3x squared plus 15x plus 18. Okay, so I've given you 4 quadratic equations, and I want you guys to try and solve these on your own. So I'll pause our recording and I'll set a little timer. I'm going to give you just 10 minutes since we're getting close to our break time. Don't worry about finishing them. If you run out of time before the 10 minutes and you're not done, it's okay. Just do as much as you can. So I will pause that. Okay, we are back from our break, and I gave you 4 problems to solve on your own. I wanted you to solve by factoring. So we're just going to start with number 1, and we'll go through these together. As we go through the process, if you notice on your page you got a different answer or you did it in a different way, let me know because we can talk about it. So let's look at number 1. X squared plus 2x plus 1. We want to factor first. What should we do? How do we start?
A, B, and C.
A, B, and C. My A is 1, my B is 2, my C is 1. Okay, so when your A is 1, what do those factor pairs look like? Yeah, we have 2 sets of parentheses where the first term is x, because we want the first terms to multiply to our first term of the quadratic equation, x squared. So x times x is x squared. Now, what's going to go in here? We only have one option. 1. Because the factors of C is 1. You can only do 1 times 1, or I guess -1 times -1 to get 1. But they need to add up to +2, so we're going to use our +1 for both. So x plus 1 times x plus 1 equals 0. So how do I find my answer? So this one we actually already have our factors. We are done with there. We don't need to check it. Unless you just want to be doubly sure. We could actually. 1x and 1x. It does equal 2x, so it's correct. Awesome. Now both of these are the same. Do I need to solve it twice? Okay, I gave you guys a trick one on accident, sorry. Since we have 2 factors that are the same, okay, if I solved both of these, I'm going to get -1 both times. So this is a rare case where you actually only have one answer because they're the same. So how did we get that -1? We pulled out one of our factors and set it equal to 0. Yes. -1 on both sides, and we get x equals -1. We could do the other factor, but it's exactly the same. We would just be writing that problem twice. So there's no need. There's actually only one answer for x here. All right. Any questions on number 1? Okay, let's look at number 2 then. I have an A of 1, a B of 7, and a C of 12. What do we do here? Yeah, let's look at the factors of C. And what are our factor pairs going to look like? What's going to go in the parentheses?
3 and 7. Oh, X.
Yes, X and X. And then I'm sorry guys, I'm kind of jumping around, so you're giving me answers that are correct, but they're all over the place. That's my fault. Okay, factors of 12. What do we have? 1 and 12. 2 and 6. 3 and 4. How do we know when we have our answer? When they add up to 7. 3 plus 4 equals 7. So that's our numbers. X plus 3, X plus 4. Now I want to solve for the values of x. This is an equation. So let's do that. We'll pull these out. X plus 3 equals 0. X plus 4 equals 0. This time we do have 2 answers. And simple equations, I won't ask you how to do it because I think we've done a bunch of these now. Subtract 3 from both sides. X equals -3. You guys get that? Awesome. And x equals -4. Those are the 2 answers you should have gotten. Did everybody get that? Everybody got 1 and 2? Good deal. Okay. Any questions? Okay, now we're going to move to 3 and 4. These are interesting because now x squared, the coefficient is not 1 on our first term. So let's start by looking at number 3. I have 2x squared plus 14x plus 20. My A is 2, my B is 14, my C is 20. When A is bigger than 1, what do we need to look for first? Greatest common factor. Is there a greatest common factor? Yes, 2. I can divide everything by 2. So, 2 goes outside, and we're going to divide each of these terms. What? We have a question? Yes. What did you do? Did you keep the 2?
Yeah.
Okay, you could do it that way too. I'm going to show you this way first, and then we'll look at your method. So if I factored out a 2 first, what do my terms become? 2x squared is now x squared plus, 14 divided by 2 is 7, plus, good, 10, okay, equals 0. Okay, so if you decided to go ahead and factor out the 2 first, it might make finding your factor pairs a little bit easier just because we're working with smaller numbers now. But again, I'll show you the other way if you decide not to factor, because in previous problems, when we've been doing factoring the last week or so, we always want to factor completely. We want to try to take a greatest common factor out first. But what you're going to come to discover here is when we're solving the equations, it actually won't matter in the end. So let's finish this. Now I have a new A, B, and C. My A is 1, my B is now 7, and my C is now 10. So, because my A is 1, what does that do to our factor pairs? Our first terms are x's, good. X and x, and what am I forgetting?
2.
My 2. Bring that out to the side. And how am I going to figure out what numbers go in here? Yeah, my factors of 10. I want to put 2 numbers that multiply to 10 but add up to 7. So, let's see, I have 1 and 10, 2 and 5. We can stop. What's 2 plus 5? 7. So, we're going to do plus 2 and plus 5. And there are our factor pairs. So now we're just going to solve the 2 equations that we need to create. Now, we've got a 2 hanging out here. Do I need to pay attention to that? You would think you would. You would think. But since it's equal to 0, let me show you what's going to happen. Let's say I decided to write 2 outside of my x plus 2 equals 0. Okay? If I do this, what would my first step be? Yeah, we could distribute this 2 and multiply to get 2x plus 4 equals 0. And what would we do next? Now let's think, oh, yes, that's okay. That's okay. Minus 4 on both sides. Bring my 2x equals -4 down. And my last step, divide by 2. And I would get x equals -2. It's just extra steps. Ignore the 2, because if I did x plus 2 equals 0, I'm also going to get -2. And it's so much faster. Watch this. X plus 2 equals 0. minus 2. X equals negative 2.
Do you put the 2 on the outside?
So if I have my 2 on the outside right here, like I solved it with 2 times x plus 2 equals 0, I tried this. What ends up happening is I multiply by 2 on both things, and at the end I got to divide by 2 to get it back off the x. It ends up being an extra step that we don't necessarily need, and you'll notice we get the same answer whether we include it or not. It seems weird that that is true, but it works because we're setting it equal to 0. We could go into about an hour-long lesson on why this is true. But I'm just going to tell you for now, this is true. If you want to know more, feel free to come in on a Friday and we can do some math theory. But I'm going to save my breath in your ears just because it would take so long to talk about it. Now, we have x is negative 2. Am I done? No, what do I still need to do?
X plus 5.
X plus 5 is 0. And we subtract 5 from both sides to get x equals negative 5. So x is negative 2 and x is negative 5 should be your answers. Is that what you got?
Yeah, I just
Perfect.
divide like that.
So let me ask you this. For your factor pairs, did you get 2x plus 4 and x plus 5?
No, I got 2x plus 10 and x plus 2.
That's what I got.
2x plus 10 and x plus 2. But you still got the same answers?
Yeah.
It works. It works. There's a lot of different ways to do it. What'd you say?
I said, we don't have to do that step if we don't need to.
No. Because whenever we're solving these, whenever they're in an equation, if you don't take out the greatest common factor first, it's going to end up happening later without you realizing it, because the equations that I solve, you're going to, I'm going to spend too long trying to think of the way to say it. You can do it both ways and it will work, which has been proven by the fact that we did different methods and we all got the same answer. Are we okay with that?
The 2 cancel each other out.
Yes, the 2's will cancel each other out, exactly. Okay, any questions on number 3?
I have a maybe obvious question.
Sure.
So when we're writing the answers for this, how do you want us to like put it? Just keep circling it, or
Good question.
because now there's 2 answers.
Yes, yes. That's a great question because I don't want us to accidentally put our answers on the wrong problem and things like that. So I think one of the best ways to combine the answers, first of all, if you just circle 2 bubbles, that's fine with me. This is okay. But if you like to have all of your work kind of in one place, keep it a little more organized, we can say x equals negative 2, comma, negative 5. That is one way to write it.
So these are said like pairs that you would put on the graph?
Yes, you're looking ahead. These will eventually be what we call the zeros of a parabola. I know. So, I'm going to show you something. It might scare you, but it's not so bad, I promise. It looks scary and it's not. This is what the graph of this equation looks like. And what you just solved for is these 2 points. You found these, the zeros, because we set the equation equal to 0 and solved. So whenever y on a graph is 0, telling us that we're not going up or down, this is where the numbers will be. Now, don't even think about this unless it is like super exciting and interesting to you. I don't want to give anybody a panic attack. We're not looking at that today, okay? Right now, we're just looking at this. We're just solving equations. Okay, but it will be coming eventually. It is not as scary as it looks, though. We really do break it down at every single little baby step. I'm not going to throw something in your face without explaining it as thoroughly as possible. Any questions? Okay, let's look at number 4, the last one. And your work might look different than mine. We could take out a greatest common factor first, or we couldn't. Either way, we'll probably get the same answer. But let's see. I have 3x squared plus 15x plus 18 equals 0. What should I do here first? Divide?
Find the greatest common factor.
Yeah, we'll find the greatest common factor and we will divide that. So what would be a greatest common factor? 3. So the difference between finding the greatest common factor at the beginning and not is that if you do the dividing now, your equations will be easier to solve later. If not, it'll just be a longer equation rather than a short one where it's just x and x. So you're going to end up doing that work anyway. It's just whether you want to do it at the beginning or the end. So if I factor out a 3, what happens to my terms? Good. X squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. And what's this going to factor to? Yeah, x plus 2, x plus 3. Because 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 plus 3 is 5. So they work. They work. Okay. What should I do next?
Solve for each side.
Solve for each one. Do we need to include that 3?
No.
You don't need to. You can if you just want to, but you don't have to. So we're going to set both of these to 0 because that's what the original equation tells us. And we'll solve. Minus 2 on both sides gives us an answer of x is negative 2. And minus 3 on both sides gives us an answer of x equals negative 3. So our answer overall would be x equals negative 2 and negative 3. There we go. Did we get that one too? Just did it differently? Got the same answers though? Good deal. Okay guys, any questions about that? Very exciting. I'm going to let you leave, okay? That's all I'm teaching you today. If you still need to work on your quiz, feel free to stay and do that. But that is all today. I'm going to give you a break, no exit ticket either. It's a busy week. Yep. There we go. Okay. Yes.
Factoring trinomials is
Is it a, what are you talking about?
factoring trinomials, or was it just?
Oh, so anytime I give you a worksheet, it's optional. It's always just for practice. You don't have to turn that in.
Oh, okay.
Anything that has like a due date written on it will be due, and I'll always tell you. And it'll be also written up on the board.
Okay, so this is just like.
Nope, just practice. It's optional. You can do it if you want. You can throw it away. I'll never know. Up to you. All right.